I'm Sarah Lynch, and you are listening to Your Next Move, Audio Edition, produced by Inc. and Capital One Business. Today's episode comes from the Your Next Move vault and is a conversation between B. Dixon and Tim Brown. Tim is the co-founder and co-CEO of AllBirds, a mission-driven clothing brand focusing on innovating around sustainable materials. In their conversation, they cover Tim's evolution from professional soccer player to entrepreneur and how to build a strong team. And now, here is B's conversation with Tim Brown. Enjoy.
Tim, I'm so excited to hear your story, man. Welcome to Your Next Move. How are you doing?
Thank you. Good, really good. Thank you for having us. It's a real privilege.
Oh, man, I'm grateful for you to be here. And look, I have to tell you, I have on the R&R sweatsuit from AllBirds and the Tree Dashers. And I'm grateful because I feel like I'm walking around in house shoes and pajamas right now.
And with that hat, it's just all working. So that's great.
Pulled it all together.
Pulled it all together. No, I appreciate it and excited to sort of tell you the story of how those things came to be.
I'm grateful. So I want to start off, your journey has been incredible, right? And since the beginning, your mission has been all about purpose, culture, sustainability. You were a pro soccer player. You decided to leave there. Then you went to attend business school. Then you started your company. Tell me about how all of these things kind of transpired, because you've had a really remarkable life. And your upbringing in New Zealand. Let's not forget about that.
Well, maybe that's the most important thing and maybe the place to start. Yeah, I grew up in New Zealand, and it's a place that's very dear to my heart and in many ways is infused quite deeply in the DNA of AllBirds and where ultimately I started, the path to create the business. I grew up there. I left America to come here on a soccer scholarship and got the gift of an education, a design education, and a sporting experience at the University of Cincinnati, and ended up having about a decade-long career playing professional sport that took me to the World Cup in 2010 with New Zealand, which was really special. And along the way, I kind of, one of the best things about playing sport at a high level is you get lots of free gear, yeah? And I started to see that it was logoed and made from plastic a lot of the times and synthetic materials and started really a curiosity to try and understand if there was a different way of doing it, and really had no idea. I was still playing sport. I was very focused on that, but the whole journey began as a curiosity project back in New Zealand with no sense of maybe what it would become.
Can you tell us a little bit about your mission, the mission of AllBirds? Because I feel like what you were just talking about really informed that mission.
It wasn't immediately clear at the beginning, and that was a problem. I mean, even on my sporting journey, like I always love soccer. I've got to say football. Sorry, I always love football. I've got to say it. I'll get in trouble otherwise. I always loved it. I grew up playing it, and I was fortunate enough to play it professionally. And then I kind of got there, and I was living a dream, but at the same time, maybe sort of wondering what it all meant. And I got a taste of playing for New Zealand, for my country, and I saw the impact that could have on my community and what it meant to my family. And so there was the sense of sort of the role of purpose in going after things. And then this journey to take New Zealand to the World Cup, it hadn't happened since 1982, and it was this big dream, but it was about something larger than just yourself. And then with AllBirds, we started making shoes. I started with my brother and one of my friends in the early days. We went through like hundreds of versions of this thing, got told by a lot of people it couldn't be done, knew nothing about how to make shoes, found a factory on the internet, did like every mistake you could like every dumb thing, and sort of then started to, launched it on a Kickstarter, and it started to work. And I had this moment where I'm like, well, I'm making shoes, but why am I doing that? I didn't dream of making shoes. I didn't grow up on a sheep farm, as good as that would be for the story. So what's the larger thing? And I met my co-founder, Joey, who had an understanding that the world was changing and that climate change was the problem of our generation, and that we needed to find more sustainable ways to make the things we use every day. And that unlocked that. And I kind of didn't look back from that moment.
Yeah, that's incredible. And how'd you come up with the name AllBirds?
Well, again, it's a nod to New Zealand. When people first came people first came to New Zealand, there was nothing there but birds, no mammals. So it's a nod to the provenance of where we started this whole thing, and also the idea too that when the birds are okay, their environment is okay, and that's been our purpose and our mission from the beginning. So it's just a little nod to that.
Your passion for sustainability, especially, you already had that passion, but when you brought in your co-founder, it kind of just like locked it in because you guys were really aligned. Was that what made, at what point did you guys decide to become a B Corp? And then would you say that you needed and like was becoming a B Corp just a part of what you guys decided the process would need to be once you got the company started? Did that come from you, or did that come from your co-founder, or did it just make sense?
I mean, to be really clear, like I think no one doesn't grow up in New Zealand without an empathy for the environment. But to be really clear, like sustainability as a purpose and something that I really wanted to devote a huge part of my career and my life towards solving was not immediately clear to me until I met Joey. I'd had, through my experience in sport, an understanding of how purpose can fuel performance and can make, going after really complicated things really mean something. But it really took Joey to kind of unlock that as the true North Star of the business. And when we founded AllBirds together in San Francisco in 2015, I'd retired from sport, had gone off to business school and worked on the idea a little bit. We'd sort of gone through a Kickstarter campaign. And the B Corp status was just a way it wasn't even a thing we thought about. It was just a way to enshrine our purpose in the governance of the company, make it a non-negotiable if both of us sort of disappeared for any reason, and make it kind of part of the charter of why we were doing things. And as we went out to raise money and build the business, no one's really questioned it. I think it's a testament to maybe how far we've come, that a B Corp is, while still new, even on the public company stage, there's not that many. I think it's just become a very acceptable and in a positive way sort of term for understanding that business stands for something more than just shareholders. It's about stakeholders, the community. It's about doing something. Business can be a true force for good.
The businesses we do have an impact on everything, right? They have an impact on life, on the planet, on people's bodies that wear it. So, I think the responsibility that you and your partner made to actually like make that the mission and the sole purpose of your company, I think that speaks volumes because it's important.
Yeah, it is important, but it's also forward-looking. Business can innovate, it can invest, it can create, it can solve problems. Like government and individual citizens always have a role to play. But I think business as a force for good can be such an offensive weapon for bringing about real change. And I think we've found that with AllBirds, and not just AllBirds, a whole community of businesses now that are tackling sustainability in really meaningful ways, that business has got a real role to play. And I think that transition, that awakening has been a really powerful one. And we're just still in the early stages of realizing what it can do and what it can be.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful. And look, we've applied to be a B Corp. It is not an easy process, but I think it's dope that they make it that way because it shouldn't just be an easy process.
Well, it's imperfect. I mean, how do you compare a media organization with a manufacturer of footwear and apparel to a corner store, to an advertising agency, one that's in New Zealand? At the end of the day, these things are imperfect, but they're moving things forward. They're moving the conversation forward. It shouldn't be easy. You should have to do some work, but that forces reflection. It forces improvement. It forces you to think creatively. I mean, similarly for us, with the carbon number and the labeling of the footprint of the individual products that we make, again, that's we've had to kind of make those rules up. And sometimes you just got to do that. You got to you can't wait. You just got to go. And I feel like it's an example of doing that.
I love that you put the carbon footprint on all of your apparel. I love that. And can you tell me about that? Is it the lower the number, the better?
Yeah, look, I mean, at the end of the day, all the products and services that we use, we need to make them with as close to zero impact as possible. Everything that we consume, use, has effectively a carbon footprint. You as an individual have a carbon footprint. Inc. magazine has a carbon footprint. AllBirds does. New Zealand does. America does. And it all ladders up to a global number that we need to reduce. And it was a big lightning bolt for us at AllBirds when we realized that you could actually sort of take that huge number, break it down as a company, and then break it down on the individual product level, and then innovate against it. We bonus our executives against performance around lowering the carbon number. Every product is labeled with it. And at the end of the day, in the same way that calories are on food, it starts to become another communication to the consumer about the work that's been done behind the scenes. So we believe, it's a really exciting part of the future conversation around sustainability, that carbon is really the North Star for how we hold all the various complicated different parts of our society and our world together and hold them accountable to the same scorecard. And we recently did a partnership with Adidas that kind of really tried to accelerate the idea of people working together to lower that number. So it's a really exciting moment.
It is. I can understand that, because in a lot of ways, you're kind of teaching the future how to do it. You guys are leading by example.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, and it's not just us, but I mean, traditionally, when you've made a product, you've thought about what it looks like, what it costs, and maybe the utility of it. And now we're introducing this fourth variable around carbon that is starting to change the form and the packaging and the weight and the consideration of the creation of the product. And it's a really exciting moment. Oftentimes, and for good reason, the conversation around sustainability is all the things you should do less of. But it can also be about creation and innovation. And I think that's the moment we're in, where we have to move faster. And the carbon accountability and scorecard becomes a real sort of scorecard and a way of actually doing that in a meaningful way beyond just, hey, I'm trying really hard, so.
Right, because you're putting your money where your mouth is. So would you say not even your money, you're putting your time, your effort, I mean, it's incredible, because there's so much, I've used this word a lot, but there's just so much responsibility to the planet in actually taking that leap. Like I'm in business, so I know how hard it is to be committed to a cause to that level. You know what I mean? It actually requires sometimes even more of an investment than what people may think.
Oh, totally. Yeah. It's hard. Make no mistake. But it's the future of how we're going to create the products and services we use. We're convinced of that. Everything has a number. We released a product with Adidas that was 2.94 kilograms of carbon. A hamburger it's about less than half a hamburger. When you get on a plane and return from New York to San Francisco, it's 2,000 kilograms approximately. So every thing we do, everything we consume is part of our overall number. And increasingly, we believe that's going to be the scorecard for how we measure impact, which is not to say, in the same way that with calories, that you don't want to have a hamburger sometime, or you want the best food. You just got to understand the balance and the puts and takes of all the different ways that you consume and eat. And I think the same thing is coming to products. And we feel like we're trying to go first and really make up the rules and sort of show people how that can be done to make better products and to tell the story to people who are craving, I think, clarity on the best way to act.
That's incredible. Would you say that is your defining moment? And if it's not, can you tell us about what the most defining moment of AllBirds were, was on your journey?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, I think just starting, I think I've found, a lot of people talk about starting things and building businesses, and to actually go and do it was really difficult. And I'm proud of starting. And as simple as that may sound, and obviously, I can't overlook the power of meeting Joey and the partnership, the difference, like culturally, in terms of education, experience, all the different things that kind of came together to have a partner to do this was, AllBirds wouldn't have happened without that. And then you go, hey, when Barack Obama wore the shoes, or Jacinda Ardern wore the shoes, or we met Leonardo DiCaprio or Emma Watson, there's all these things along the way that kind of just give you a little nudge to sort of say, okay, we keep going, we're on the right track here. So it's been a really special journey, but I believe we're only just starting it.
Speaking of starting, Adam Sutton wanted to ask you, this is an audience question, what gave you the courage to make the leap on your own before you found your co-founder?
I didn't, Adam, I had studied design and found myself playing sport, and I started this as a curiosity project to fill time a little bit so that I wasn't, just playing PlayStation in the afternoon. So it was really born from curiosity. And I think if there's one word that I think embodies AllBirds, it's that, everyone out there with an idea or a sketchbook or, who's in between jobs or at a job they don't want, don't ever undervalue the thoughts and the ideas and the observations you have. They can be the start of big things. And that certainly was the case with AllBirds. And, I started selling them to my teammates who were getting all sorts of free gear and largely just made fun of me. But it became this thing I worked on. I took my holidays in the off season and started to go into footwear factories from the beginning. So it really was, it was about curiosity and just sort of starting. And as I retired from sport and went off to school, I kind of couldn't get another job. So it wasn't like I was choosing from a menu of all these different options. It kind of became out of necessity. And so I launched it on Kickstarter and kind of the rest is a little bit of history.
So you famously made your investment in technology and material innovation open source. Was it scary for you to make that decision?
Not really. I mean, again, we didn't just do it because we're good guys. I think we did it because there was a real business opportunity to do so. We wanted to make EVA is one of the most commonly used materials in footwear and sneakers. It's in kind of like every pair of trainers or shoes that you wear, yeah. But it's largely made from petroleum-derived materials. And we had an idea, largely on the back of Joey's previous career, to work with a green energy company in Brazil called Braskem to do it differently. But we were tiny. I think we had like 6 employees at the time. So we mocked up a cover of the Wall Street Journal and we went down and saw this big company. We sort of said, hey, don't just do this for us, do this for the entire industry, and let's make it open source. We knew that the more people that used it, making it from sugarcane, the byproducts of the production of sugarcane, made the material kind of carbon negative in its raw form. So the more people that used it, the better it was for the environment. But we also negotiated the ability for the cost to come down as that scale grew. So it was an example, I think, of purpose and profit not being in competition, working together to create new types of business models and new ways of working. And there's now north of 100 companies globally that are either using or in the process of using it. And that's become a big business for that company. And we don't do that every time. But in that particular case, I mean, and the partnership with Adidas is another example of a non-traditional way of working where two competitors came together to see if they could kind of crack a problem faster than they could individually. And I think this moment that we're in, this existential crisis around climate change, everything should be on the table in terms of what we need to do to drive this thing forward.
So your decision to not make that about competition, right? Because most of us have been, especially most of us entrepreneurs, have been conditioned to kind of keep our secret sauce to ourselves, right? I feel like what you all are doing with sharing this technology is really powerful. How would you encourage other entrepreneurs? Because it can happen to any business, right? You can figure out something that can be innovative for the entire industry. How would you encourage other entrepreneurs to do the same thing, to not necessarily hold on to something that could benefit the world, the earth, the planet, right?
Every situation will be different, and every business will be different. I just think the core message is that purpose and profit don't necessarily have to be in competition. We can rethink, in fact, we need to rethink the rules of how we engage and how we create. And in the case of the Sweet Foam, we were able to lower our costs by making it open source and do more good in the process. And, I think it speaks to the power of purpose as a sort of a driver of innovation and of risk-taking and creativity. But also, it speaks to the moment we're in where categories, industries, every business, if they're not thinking about it, they should be, or they're trying to. It's being upended. We're in the early chapters of a sustainable revolution where I think everything is going to need to be rethought. And it's full of entrepreneurial opportunities. And so I just think that you want to run a profitable business. You want to grow and be really successful. But I think if you're not thinking in terms of the context of this massive change to the way that we live, then you're missing a huge opportunity. So I think you need to adjust the mindset in terms of how you think about the problem.
I agree. I have another audience question for you from Christy Talley. She wants to know, are there opportunities for solopreneurs to become involved in the shoe industry?
Oh, sure. If we're an example of anything, it's that. literally had studied graphic design at the University of Cincinnati and was playing soccer and had not really a lot of knowledge in the footwear space. But I got really curious about it, and I found a factory on Google, and I went out to sort of uncover the solution to a problem using materials and wool that had been overlooked by the category. Now, we spoke to so many different industry experts that told me, hey, stop. It's told Joey and I that we didn't know what we were doing, and we kept going. It's not to say it's easy. I mean, it was probably circa 2007 before when we started working on this, and 2015 or March 1st, 2016 when AllBirds was launched. But I'm firmly of the conviction that if you work hard at something for long enough and you care deeply enough about it, you'll be able to work it out. And so I think that, sure. And so I think the world's full of problems worth solving. And if you feel it's in shoes, or if you feel that it's wherever it is, I sort of think it's a real privilege to be able to kind of work on that. But it's hard. It's really, really hard. And you're going to have to kind of overcome a lot of naysayers and a lot of challenges along the way.
And that's startup life, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, totally. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Because, when humans who are, especially when you first get started in business, when we think about everything that we interact with all day, every day, everything is really a wheel that's been recreated. I loved her question because I thought, I don't know, I think it's nice when people realize that they can really whenever you put your mind to is what you can do.
If you want it bad enough and you feel it and you're prepared to kind of go through the washing machine of working it out, I mean, it's entirely possible. And, does the world need another pair of shoes? Yeah, they need of course, every category and industry, there's always opportunities, and it's often the experts and the people that know the most that overlook a new way of doing things. So, yeah, I think we're a testament at AllBirds to the idea that's possible for sure, no question.
Were you ever fearful about the big guys coming in and copycatting what AllBirds was doing?
Not so much fearful. I mean, I'm fearful for sure about lots of things. I mean, I think that's part of the kind of the journey of building a business, but the copycats, like in many ways, we've had a lot of them through the first 5 or so years of being in business, and always sort of taken them as a compliment. But it's a challenge, you're competing, you're trying to make a better product, a better experience, and everything's on the table. But, I think what you understand is that for legacy industries and big established companies, they do some things extraordinarily well. But in the case of sort of sustainability, they're trying to shift a metaphorical oil tanker kind of around and change the way that things have been done in some cases for years and decades, and that new startups freed from knowing too much and from rules and processes can move really, really fast. And I think that's what we found. Natural materials had been overlooked by the category, and the default was using cheaply, widely available synthetic materials. And so it was harder, and we had to work harder and find a factory that believed in us and do all sorts of different things. But that opportunity existed. And so, I just would encourage anyone who feels like they want to have a crack at it. It can be extraordinarily rewarding.
Especially when you're small, you can be a lot more nimble. You can move a lot quicker. You can innovate faster. And I think AllBirds shows that. Like, your guys' innovation is crazy.
That's the engine that drives this, natural material innovation. It's been there from the beginning, and it started with, there's lots of sheep in New Zealand, and started with like this legacy industry that had been around for a long time, but was crying out for innovation. That was the starting point for this. And I think peak sheep in New Zealand was 1980, and they had like sort of 100 million sheep, and now there's like less than 25, and no young kid is growing up in New Zealand wanting to be a sheep farmer. So the opportunity to kind of innovate in that material was sort of, I think, a turnaround opportunity for this incredible material that's a part of New Zealand's culture and history, and has some incredible properties. And then we moved to eucalyptus fiber and sweet foam that we talked about, and it's the engine that drives our product creation. And we're working out how to do it, I think, better than most. And it's a huge opportunity for us as a business moving forward.
We're going to take a quick break and be back with more from Bea and Tim.
What did you Google when you first got started? And how did you figure out how to start using these materials? Was it because your co-founder was kind of in that type of a business? Like, how do you start to even begin to do that?
You know, you just don't know what you don't know. Like, if I could go back in time, I would sort of say to myself, like, whoa, you really don't know enough about this. And, but you just work it out. And like, I literally found a factory on Google and emailed a bunch of folks and went and visited one. I was like, oh my God, this is so antiquated in the way shoes are made, and look at the materials. And I remember reading a magazine one day in my apartment in Wellington and saw this decline of the wool industry and this opportunity for material innovation that led to like an R&D grant in the very early days while I was still playing, that turned the wool into the first ever material for footwear. So there was all these things, if you just start to connect the dots. Like I had no business plan out of the gate. It was fueled by the benefit of a little bit of time in my context, and that's important. Not everyone has that, but I was enjoying myself and I was trying to solve a problem that was my own, and it turned out along the way, that it was a problem that a lot of other people wanted to engage with. And, I think it's interesting. I sort of, any idea in its early stages, Beatrice, has got to seek feedback. Like if you don't seek feedback, even in your life, I think you're dumb. But if you're listening to all of it, you might be even more dumb. It's all about filtering it and finding your own path forward to kind of navigate through these roadblocks and just kind of ultimately listen and tune your approach so that you try not to do too many dumb things, but at the end of the day, sort of follow your path because you believe in something and you want to do it. And so I think that's one of like my key rules is the listen but discard, and getting good at that. Even now, even where I sit now today, continues to be really important.
I think that I agree with you, and I think that not knowing what you don't know actually benefits you, because when you do know, sometimes you're not willing to take the leaps that you would take just because you're literally just ignorant and you don't know, you have the gift of ignorance. So you're just like, okay, I'll go jump off that, cliff real fast. Maybe I'll fly. I don't know.
Yeah, powered by naivety. They have this sort of saying in a mindset in New Zealand, number 8 wire, which is like the wire that sort of is used in all the farming. It like makes all the like the fences. And there's the sense, I think, because New Zealand was on the edge of the world, an outpost from everything, that people had to be really creative. And so there was this mentality around number 8 wire that you could kind of solve any problem with number 8 wire. You could like turn it into anything to solve it. And I think it's amazing how resourceful you can be when you're trying to move forward. And in my particular case, like I sort of said, it wasn't like I was trying to step away from another job, or I had a little bit of time in the early days. And then when I retired from sport, I didn't have any other option. I had to kind of make it work, and so it's amazing how resourceful you can be when you kind of commit to that. But it takes courage, and that's what I sort of said. If there's one thing that I'm proud of, that we started, because once you start, then it both gets harder, but you're underway, and then you're moving.
Like there's so many terrible things about COVID-19, but so much was created. So many things were created out of COVID-19. So many businesses had to figure out how to go virtual. Companies that had fitness gyms and yoga studios, we had to figure it out. So what you just said around, you just never know what you're capable of until you're forced to do it. Like when there's no other option, you just have to make it work, So I completely agree with that. And when you got started with your Kickstarter video was amazing, by the way. So this is a 2-level question. When you got started with your Kickstarter, like, did you have a team of people that understood how to record and how to do a Kickstarter video that helped you to do that? How did you make it so beautiful and amazing?
Well, it was my brother's mate. It was actually, it was him and one other guy, and I think we paid him $700, which is like New Zealand dollars, so maybe it was like. Wow. And they showed up one day at my family friend's farm in Pahata Nui, which is like north of Wellington in New Zealand in the North Island, and we had the farm for a day, and my dad's mate like moved the sheep around, and we'd written the script the night before, and my brother was there, and I really didn't want to do it. I was kind of thinking we had 6 pairs of prototypes, and I remember being on the farm that day and and I was in front of camera. I wasn't doing a very, very good job, and my brother was trying to get me fired up. He believing in this, and he trying to tie the shoes to a fence, and he electrocuted himself. And it was like, because it was electrified, the fence, and he fell over on the ground. I just remember burst out laughing, and it was like, okay, let's do this, And we had a great deal of fun, and the video was like, we put it up there, and I didn't think, anyone was going to buy a pair other than my mum, and it ended up taken off and sold through the 1,000 pairs in 4 days. I think it did 125 grand, and we had to shut it off. And Joey, my co-founder, was one of the early customers, and I might add a difficult one. But again, there was like family, friends. If I've had one enormous advantage is that support from people close to me to sort of say, hey, you know what, go for it. Not everyone has that. I had that, and it was like, go for it. We're gonna be here to catch you if you fall. And what if it worked out? And just when, usually the way with these things, just when it's getting so hard, you keep going around that corner, that's when it unlocks itself. And we stuck with this for a long time, and I'm proud of that in retrospect.
I love it. Overnight success is a 10-year-old business, right?
Yeah, it's an old story.
Do you think that Kickstarter is still a viable option for for younger companies that are coming up?
Whatever it takes. I think it depends. It depends on the price point of the product. It depends on what type of product it is. I mean, I think there's a community of people there that, have been incredibly loyal to our brand, that want to see new ideas succeed and kind of take a lot of pride in helping bring non-traditional ideas into sometimes really established categories.
You guys did a really great job. I mean, it was beautiful. You wouldn't have known that the day was hard. You wouldn't have known that you threw somebody $700. Like, you would have never known that.
Well, I appreciate that. I would take it as a compliment.
Tim, what advice do you have for founders who have an innovative idea and really want to disrupt, who want to disrupt an industry and want to create a legacy product? And what would your advice be to them?
Well, I mean, I think we covered a bunch of it, but just sort of recap some of that stuff. I mean, I think find the purpose. The purpose will unlock the largest sense of why it matters. And when it gets hard, and it will, you'll call on that to run through the brick walls you need to make something a reality. So I think that's kind of a non-negotiable, and not a new idea, but that there's no shortage of problems in the world. And I think finding one that you're prepared to devote your career to, and then being lucky enough to actually have an entrepreneurial opportunity to do that, is one of the great privileges of this, of what can be a really hard process. So I think do it with someone. I mean, some people do it by themselves. I don't know how you do that. Find a team. In my particular case, Joey, co-founder, and challenge yourself to do it with someone who's different from you, that has complementary skills, that will tell you the truth and will support you in equal measure at different parts of the journey, and will make it fun along the way. But that sense of team is really powerful to me. And so I think that's a really, really critical piece of it. We talked about starting, so I think the sooner you can do that. I mean, I think words like disrupt get ahead of the start. And making stuff, particularly making things, is really difficult. So do it, and then seek feedback. Seek it widely and broadly and from everyone, because that's the only way you're going to get better. But listen to your instinct to ignore a whole bunch of it, because if you're doing it right and you're courageous, you're seeking a lot of expert opinion. And to overcome that, sort of say, hey, here's someone who's been in the footwear industry or the wool industry or whatever it is for 20 years, and they're telling me, like, you're an idiot, stop now. And I'm going to just kind of skirt around that. That takes, you have to listen to something, because otherwise you're going to do it like everyone else has done it. And so I think that's really, really key. And then finally, and this maybe comes from my sporting experience, like, believe in the power of getting a little bit better every day, that it will compound over time. And I think a friend of mine told me this, and I'm sure it comes from someone famous and smart, but I think we overestimate what we can do in the short term, and we underestimate what we can do in the long term by just getting better and repping and showing up and listening and improving and tweaking and going again. And over time, if you're prepared to stick with something, more often than not, you're going to get there. And that's the key. And you do that by surrounding yourself with a great community and with friends, and doing it with people you respect who are going to challenge you, and all the other things that ladder up to it. But that, for me, is the key experience for me, both in my sporting and business career, is that compounding impact of that continuous improvement mindset.
Yeah. Perfect practice makes perfect. I can't remember which coach said that,
Someone smart.
Somebody, yeah, man.
But you got to keep showing up at practice, and you got to show up at practice because you want to be there, and when it's cold and it's rainy or whatever, So
it doesn't matter. Yeah, I think I think that's beautiful. And for a lot of people, just so you can understand, starting literally could mean just going to your Secretary of State and getting your business license, or making that product, that skincare product, so that you can try it, or making that food and making sure that people love it, or making that shoe, right? Even if you have no idea.
All of that's true. I suspect the moment where it will really feel real is when you get your first customer. And there's a contract inherent in that you're going to deliver something, and that's when it gets real. And that's when you wake up in the middle of the night going, oh man, like,
wow.
And so
I did that.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but go ahead, give it a nudge if you want to do it.
So Tim, AllBirds is probably one of the most comfortable shoes that I've ever worn in my life. And I swear to you, I'm not just saying that because I'm interviewing you. Like, these are incredible. I went into the store yesterday with an intention to buy a shoe to work out. And the people in the store were extremely helpful, by the way. But then I noticed that I had done research, so I knew that you sold apparel. And then I put the apparel on and it feels like heaven on your skin. How did you make that transition out of footwear into apparel? I know it's just a natural transition, but was that a part of your concept from the beginning? Like, did you know that you wanted to do that, or did that come later?
Yeah, it was a sort of a natural extension of the work we do with natural materials. So we started to really think deeply about wool and eucalyptus fiber and a whole bunch of other things. And we started to sort of see that there was an opportunity to make socks and then underwear, and slowly sort of taking these materials that were working so well to create these incredible experiences in footwear and to expand them. And we're in the early chapter of our journey in apparel, but the real hero here is nature, yeah? Like that, just against the skin. And if you can, for the better part of half century, we've been innovating with synthetic materials, and we believe that nature is all the answers, and it's really about unlocking that. And we need to play catch up a little bit with these materials to sort of create these incredible experiences, and that's what we're trying to do. And we started in footwear with just one shoe, and it was really focused, and then we've added performance footwear. So we've got our first running shoes that maybe you encountered there. That is another big area of focus for us. I think we were told, again, talk about experts, that natural materials couldn't make great performance materials, that was the realm of synthetics, and we've disproved that with our first product, the Dasher.
When you guys were growing, because you guys grew rapidly, or what seemed like it was rapid, what were the mistakes you were making?
Oh, how long you got? So many. I feel like, that's part of it. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, the products are super important, and the mission, the brand, the positioning, all the rest of it. I think at the end of the day, the team that you put together is not a new idea, but it's a really hard thing to do. And the way we thought about it was, let's get people in from early on that were way smarter than us. We never really made shoes before, so let's solve that problem, and let's understand just even how you do that. And let's not find our factories on Google. But that takes a certain amount of courage to sort of be really, really clear and upfront and self-aware of the things that you do really well and the things that you don't. And so that was a starting point, and then I think allowed us to sort of really bring in a team. And we were always kind of thinking, okay, and I credit Joey a lot with this, like we'd always acted really small but dreamed really big. And so we were always trying to hire, and continue to still try and hire people that were for the next chapter right now. And that takes a certain amount of getting them to believe that they're going to leave their really great job at this really established company that knows what they're doing to come and work with the people that haven't really done that. And I don't want to say that was necessarily a mistake, but it's just, that's one of the things that's really, really hard to get right. And I think we got that right a lot. And the people that we have and the people that we learn from were critical, because first thing you got to admit though there is that you don't have all the answers, and that sometimes isn't always easy because the world's sort of expecting you to have them, so.
I have another audience question, which you've kind of spoken to a little bit, throughout this conversation. These conversations, this is what I love about your next move, is this is kind of like a little masterclass, right? For people that are watching, that want to do what you and I have been so lucky and honored, because I'm honored to be here and have these opportunities, what we've been so lucky to do. But Kevin Gerard asks, what is the process to find the best manufacturer to work with or the best factory to work with? External, and I'm going to add this to Kevin's question, external to going on Google.
Yeah, well, I mean, Beatrice, it's not easy. And I think, like, again, the way that we thought about it once we got established was that mass manufacture of footwear had kind of moved writ large to some big countries like China, and there was an opportunity to kind of go back further upstream. And we started in Korea, a place where shoes had been made for a long time but had become more expensive. And we found some smaller but very established factories that we paid more, who were prepared to really work hard to realize our sustainable vision and create products with extraordinary quality. And it was counterintuitive, but we wanted a big mind share of a smaller place rather than a small mind share of a larger place. And we wanted to do things differently. And when we started, the idea that even 5 years, 6 years ago, we started making shoes, and the idea that we were going to use sustainable materials and pay more for them in some cases for componentry that people wouldn't see, our manufacturers looked at us like we had six heads. Like, why would you do that? This doesn't matter. And it's amazing how that shifted even now. But we developed like deep relationships like anyone else. Those partners are running their businesses. They have visions for the future. They want to make an impact. And it's about deep relationships with those teams, and we've created them. Some of those factories we were still working with deeply to kind of innovate, to create, to solve these problems, to do things differently. And along the way, get certifications, put solar panels on your roof. It's like anything else. It's a key partnership, and you got to get and visit and see and break bread and understand, like anything else, like the motivations of the people that you're working with, so they can understand yours, and then they can take a risk on you. So none of that's easy, but it's so important. In the early days, like if you can't make the thing that you want to sell, it kind of doesn't matter. And so those relationships are really, really important.
Yeah. And I completely agree with you. Getting out there to see them, meet them, shake hands, break bread, eat food, connect, do all the things is really important. And I think it's important to understand the culture and to understand how those factories treat their people.
100%.
You know?
Yeah. And that factory might be around the corner from your house. And, we looked at factories everywhere around the world and kind of before we made our decision. And you got to be there and see it, and you got to feel it, and you got to understand your partner's like dreams for the future as well. And I think if those two things can come together, then, you can create these really special relationships and friendships. And there's been really cool things have come out of that, and you've learned a lot, and they become partners in innovation and creativity as well. So it's important.
Absolutely. We are nothing without them. To be honest. I want to shift gears a little bit and go into talking about your co-founder. What do you think, especially for the humans that are watching this that are solopreneurs? I am with you. I would not know what to do without my co-founder, Simon, right? Like I would be lost without him, especially in those beginning days. Do you suggest that if you don't have a co-founder that you get one? And then what are the things that you should look for in a co-founder?
Yeah, I look, there's no rules. Everyone's going to be different. And, I couldn't have done it by myself. I tried not that so much that I tried. I was by myself for a period of time and always looking for a foil, knowing that there was some things that I could do and some things that I was seeing clearly. In the case of the product, I had a really clear vision and felt like a strength really is, around the creation. But when Joey kind of sailed in, we met through our wives who were roommates in college. He was a customer of the Kickstarter. And, this guy kind of hit me like a hurricane with a vision for the world that was going to change. And I found the purpose. But we were very different. He, has taught me so much, challenged me, supported me, but made this whole thing fun. And it comes back to kind of my earlier point. Like, I think there's a tendency to want to sort of, work and partner and, with people that are like you. And I think the courage to go and do it with someone quite different. And we still run the business as co-CEOs, and we split the business and share the business, but we overlap and we're up in each other's stuff. There's a really like delicate balance of sort of humility and confidence. But again, he's an engineer. I'm a designer, America, New Zealand. There's a lot of things that he looks at a problem very differently from me. And I've come to really appreciate that. And so I don't know another way. Doesn't mean it's the only way. But I do think if you are going to do it, look for someone who does the things that you don't do very well versus someone who's like you, who's going to kind of double down on that. I think that's probably the simple piece of advice.
So you would say in order to work in harmony, that you kind of want that person to be your positive. I don't want to say to your negative, but you don't
Totally.
want somebody that's just like you.
I don't think you do. I think even when we look at problems or we react to problems, it's just different. And so the differences create strength, and they create the ability to kind of go further together than you can individually. And that's the core, because at some point you're going to have to deeply buy into that. Not just buy into it, but deeply buy into it. And, Joe and I have had some jumps along the way where we could have gone, you know what, like, and we have, but it's always been that foundation of like, hey, look, this would be less good if one or the other wasn't here. And I think, that's been the secret to something I'm really proud of. It's a relationship like anything else we've had to work at, and we're quite different, but I think we share values, we share a vision, we share a sort of a desire to kind of compete and get better. And so that's been a really important part of the business for us. I couldn't have done it any other way.
How do you deal with the moments when you guys don't agree?
There's always going to be a couple of big ones, and we had one particular moment where it could have gone either way, and we just sort of had to sit down and we realized that we'd been working together, but we hadn't been talking. There'd been a bunch of stuff like kind of building up, like that time you took my stapler and like didn't put it back, you know what I mean? Like it built up over long periods of time. And we're a month after we launched, and we'd had that like $1 million in our first month. We'd been like wildly successful, and we both kind of crashed. And what we realized is that this needed maintenance. And so we still meet at the start and the end of just about every week, a running list of notes for each other, super disciplined, once a quarter, and we'll step back. Once a year, we'll kind of go away together for a night and just be like, hey, where are you at? How's things going? And like really maintain that. So there's never that sense of resentment about the stapler, because it's just going to come out. And I think what we've learned along the way is that people tend to not, particularly as the organization grows, and maybe even just when it's two of you, you need to be a cheerleader for each other. And sometimes that's criticism. Hey, what's wrong? You weren't great today, or you really missed that. But also, hey, a lot of people think that was, but keep going, because that's the right thing to do. And so I think that support, both, critically and positively, has been like foundation. But that you got to work at it. You can't you got to work at it. I don't know if that resonates with you, Beatrice, with Simon, but
it does. It does. It's a relationship, just like everything else and everybody else. It's crazy, but it's beautiful. It's a beautiful one. What would you say? This is actually going to be my last question. What is your next move, Tim, professionally and personally?
We've recently become a public company, and I've never felt sort of like clearer or more excited about where we're going as a business. And I feel like the world's kind of turning to believe a lot more of the things that we thought were true even 5 years ago, which is hugely energizing and encouraging. And I feel like we've got a team around us that, like talked about earlier, that are even at the next level of this, that I feel like I'm learning from every day. And I've got a young family that hopefully doesn't burst through the door in these last few seconds, but
I would love it if they did.
Which is all good. So I honestly feel really lucky. And if there's one thing I would change, and you touched on COVID a little bit, New Zealand's still a long way away. I haven't been home for a couple of years, and like my heart's there, my family's there, and hopefully my next move is that we get past this thing sooner rather than later, and I can get back there and no problems. I've been super fortunate, but hopefully that's the next move somewhere in the future. And then along the way, we'll just keep going with AllBirds. We've got incredible momentum and this natural material innovation. I think we're doing some really extraordinary things that we can't wait to sort of bring to the world. So keep going and just keep getting a little bit better every day. Keep it that simple.
I love it. Well, keep on keeping on and keep on doing such beautiful work. You are literally the change in the world that you live in, and you embody that. And I'm grateful to have had this time to share with you and to talk with you. Thank you for spending your time with me. Me
too. But back the other way, I appreciate it. It's really an honor to be here and great to chat with you, and have a great day. I appreciate it.
You too. Thank you.
That's all for this episode of Your Next Move. Our producer is Matt Toder. Editing and sound design by Nick Torres. Executive producer is Josh Christensen. If you haven't already, subscribe to Your Next Move on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Your Next Move is a production of Inc. and Capital One Business.